Okay, yeah, we're now live on Facebook. So thank you so much, Christoph. So I'd request all the panelists we put our videos on so that we just start the session. It would be good when everyone else also puts a face into all the panelists. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar this evening, where we shall be discussing the topic Civil Society and the Advancement of Democracy in Kenya, Lessons Learned. I'd also like to welcome our online attendees who have managed to plug in now and who will continue to plug in even as we continue with the discussion. I'll introduce myself. My name is Sheila Ngatia. I'm a program coordinator at Conrad Adenauer Foundation Kenya office. And I'll also give you a brief introduction, or rather just tell you who is CAS and what we do. And then I give you the objective of this particular Zoom meeting. And then I'll hand over to our moderator, who's Njuki Githedwa. So CAS is a German political foundation closely associated to the CDU party of Germany. And we work in over 120 countries all over the world, making a unique contribution to the promotion of democracy and rule of law. And with regards to the promotion of democracy, it is often said that it is easier to struggle for democracy, but more difficult to actually, to sustain it, and that's where we come in strongly. So that is why as CAS, we continue to, to engage, several actors, including the civil society, building strong relationships along the way through the approaches like seminars and workshops and forums on citizens' rights and duties, to enable the participants who are pretty much the, Kenyan citizens, to be able to actively engage in the political processes and also hold our leaders accountable. So with regards to our meeting this evening, our main objective for this virtual meeting is actually to evaluate the strides that the civil society have made towards the advancement of, of democracy in this country. Civil society is a very key actor as far as, politics in this, not just in this country, but politics of a nation is concerned. And first of all, you'd also just like to, to educate our online viewers on who is this civil society, what constitutes, the civil society, what has been your role, so far so good, as far as the advancement of democracy is concerned, and how can the civil society become better engaged in the advancement of democracy, in our country. So those will be like the introductory kind of questions that you'd like to hear your perspectives. And then moving forward, our moderator will ask you some key questions depending on the various, now that you're experts in the different fields, so that you can just give us some good input, with regards to your expertise. So I'd like to also remind our online attendees, they can participate in these discussions on our Zoom platform here through the Q&A platform. They can send in their questions. Also on the chat box and on Zoom, they can also send their reaction. It doesn't have to be a question. It can also be a comment or a reaction, with the topic tonight. And also on Twitter, now using the hashtag #DemocracyKE, we'll also keep checking that. And when you're winding up with the session, we can check, I'll read out some of the feedbacks, or rather some of the reactions that are taking place online, and also some of the questions that the online attendees might have, and hopefully we can be able to answer some of the questions that are there. If not, we'll still follow up on our social media page, CAS social media page, and answer some of the questions that we might not be able to answer during this 2-hour session. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our moderator this evening, who is Njuki Githedwa. Njuki is a writer and a social activist who is engaged in the struggle for a free, democratic, and just society. And he will invite all our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves and take over the session. So I'd just like to wish us all fruitful discussions, and thank you so much for taking time to just plug in and also to engage in this particular topic this evening. So thank you, Njuki, and karibu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheila. I hope I am clear to everyone. So yes. Karibuni sana everyone who has been able to come to us this evening to engage with us in this important debate of the civil society and the role it has played in the advancement of democracy in Kenya. As Sheila said, I'm called Njuki Dedwa. I have been in this field for over 15 years in civil society, social movements and activism in various levels. And it's my interest really to see the society is well governed, but also well organized, and democracy is pursued in all its forms. So I'm very happy that we have colleagues here that I know for quite a long time. And we picked the people really that we felt could be able to come very fast and be available, but also be able to give us quite quick insights. And we have the experts from long-time NGO sector, people like Regina and Janak, who is joining us shortly. But also we have a mixture of young people, but also the people like Wanjiro and Jabu coming from the youth generation and the way forward, but also from other colleagues who have been with us for a long time, like Rachel Mekali. So before I give the three key agenda of this meeting, I'd like each of us here to introduce ourselves, a little bit of yourself, so that the participants watching us from all over the world will be able to know exactly who you are, apart from the short one sentence that was put in the poster. And I will start with the one that I'm seeing on top, Rachel Mekali.
Hi, comrades. My name is Rachel Mekali. Like Comrade Njuki just introduced me. I'm a proud, happy, and apologetically feminist, and a grassroots community organizer and activist. But today, at least, I have a sister who has hosted me to a place where there will not be internet interruptions and neighbors making noise. I convene a social movement called Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders Kenya. It's a network of grassroots activists, community organizers, and feminists. And I'm a board member of Young Women Leadership Institute, Amnesty International Kenya, and We Effect Kenya. Happy to be here to see comrades, sisters in the struggle. And I'm happy also to have an authentic conversation around the thematic areas. I hope also ready to sikia ukweli. Na pia also like the fact of also like pia critiquing also myself, being for this movement for the time I've been. What has been also like the learning lessons within organizing, what has been working, not working, and what needs to be done even much better. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mekali. We'll go now to Regina Opondo. Karibu, Regina.
Thank you, Njuki, and thank you for this conversation and convening this discussion. I hope it's the first of many. If I have missed others, then maybe it is one in a series of others. And I think now I can feel happy. I think I've been promoted into the old guard. Now I'm at the level of Janak as one of the old timers. So I feel very good about that. My name is Regina Opondo. I am a justice and peace worker. I've always believed that the two must go together if we are to have a cohesive society, a functional society. That is what I think I work for, whether I'm in an organization or outside of an organization. That is what I'm working for. I have always found myself, I think, in a space of networks, coalitions, consortia, and movements. I don't know if it is by design or by coincidence. So I think that shapes a lot of my society. And I think being in civil society actually own, whether you're in an organization or not, whether it is formal or informal, whether it is structured or unstructured, whether it is local or national, I consider it a space that everybody should actively.
Great. Thank you so much, Regina. Now, Jabu, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Elvis Jabu Mogeni. As it seems, I'm the only person who's not in an office setting, also probably kwa nyumba. But I had to find a safe space so that I can be able to be part of this conversation. So I work for Tribeless Youth. For the past 3 years, we've been doing amazing work on transparency and accountability and, defending of human rights. I'm a journalist by profession, and I don't want to call myself the the voice of the voiceless, but I make a lot of noise to ensure that, there's social justice is a key ingredient that is entrenched in our society. And I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Lastly, but not the least on this platform, Wanjira.
Hello, how are you guys? How are you, comrades? My name is Wanjiro. I am a co-founder of the Mathare Social Justice Center. I am part of the social justice movement in Kenya and organizing mainly with the women in justice centers. Nafunza watoto huko Mathare. I have a kids book club where we learn about our true history. I'm very happy to be part of this conversation, Democracy KA. Najua ni sensitive, but looking forward to an authentic conversation as well, kama my comrade sister Rachel. Thank you.
Great. So thank you to everyone who has been able to join us. We will still see whether Olo Janak will be able to join us in the course of these sessions. But this session has got three key objectives. The first one is that we shall be able to understand the role of civil society, generally in the civil society or in the advance of democracy. So that will be one objective, that we shall be able to understand to ourselves and others who are listening and watching what has been the role of civil society in Kenya. And the second, we shall be able to see then what has been the lessons learned, all the years that we have been together in the struggle within civil society, what has been the lessons that we have learned. And the third one will be bigger. It will talk about then how would the civil society be better engaged in advance of democracy in Kenya. So those are three key objectives. And as we look at those key objectives, I would like us to start with there'll be questions to specific people. All of you here will have specific strong questions that you will be able to respond. But we would like to enlighten ourselves and the participants who are here with the first questions. Exactly what constitutes the civil society in Kenya? This is so that to be able to be clear on the plate before we even began the discussions that are there. And I would like us to reflect, all of us, exactly what exactly constitutes the civil society in Kenya, even before we come to see the roles. And this, I would ask everyone, maybe if you feel that you can comment on this, maybe you can. I can still pick you up, but you can also volunteer to come and pick it up. What is your understanding of civil society?
For me,
Yes, Regina? Yeah.
I think I've always been clear that civil society is a space. It's a space for organizing, it's a space for coordinating, it's a space for challenging, it's a space for providing information, it's a space I know the textbook definition normally talks about the space between the state, government, and the family. So that space in between where regular citizens can organize themselves to push an agenda, to push for accountability, to demand for change, to solve their own problems. And they can be, as I said earlier, it can be a space where this organizing doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't necessarily have to be registered. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal. And it can be in the smallest unit of 3 to 2 people. The Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. Or it can be, hundreds and hundreds of people. So I've always liked to think of it as a space where whether you're a journalist, you're an academic, you're a businessman, you're just Mama Boga, you feel that you can actually get together and push problems or demand or protect your rights.
Great. Thank you, Regina, for that elaboration of the civil society as a space where all of us struggle from whatever level we are, individually or collectively, for a better society. Anyone who wants to come in as well to explain understanding of civil society? Jabu?
All right. Njuki, if I may just add on, Regina is a seasoned civil society member, if so to say. Please, Regina, do not crucify me. But in other terms, I'll perhaps say that, when mobilized, the people, they form civil society. So sometimes civil society is called the third sector, or the third estate after the government, and perhaps the business or commerce sector. And civil society has the power to influence the actions of elected policymakers and businesses. So in very few words, probably that is what I'd say, without going to the textbook definitions.
All right, great, Jabu. Thank you so much. Yeah, for elaboration of that. Anyone else before we move on to the next?
I think I'll also go next. On my side, it's more people power. And when I say people power, it's also like the voices of the people are centered within the conversation. But also like Njuki, apart from textbook, if also we talk about civil society also, is the fact, are all the voices inclusive in these discussions? Because sometimes if there isn't like that point of intersectionality, even within that civil society or civil organizing, it doesn't bring that point of civil society. And when I say this is, for example, we have civil society organizational movements that are working on land, other governance, women's rights, LGBTQ. So for us to center this kind of conversation to be that civil society, it has to be in intersectionality base. And I like the idea that Regina, she has pointed out, it doesn't have to be registered. Like even us, most of the movements we are in, they're organically formed as a cause of a struggle that we are pushing and as a struggle that we believe in. So it's also clear and important to also like affirm you don't have to be registered to be a civil society, to be part of civil society, or to be a civil society movement. And that will be my definitions. Anywhere people feel like they have to fight for human rights, democracy, women's rights, that's a point of civil society. It doesn't have to be this big NGO that has certificates or as, staff, as long as there's that point of people power. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rachel. Finally, who else will come? Wanjira?
Yeah, I think for me, in simple terms, civil society is about active citizenry, people who are vigilant about what's happening in the government, individual or groups, and come out without fear or favor to give their opinions about what should be happening in the country. Patriotic citizens and active citizens who are vigilant about the rule of law and human rights mainly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I can see Janakas is joining us. I think he'll just come in shortly. Thank you so much. I think colleagues, because of elaborations of the civil society, I think we have got various points which have come from your own understanding of civil society, like spaces where people struggle for their society, either individually or collectively. We have heard it doesn't have to be registered to say that I'm an organization that's in civil society. Doesn't necessarily have to be, as long as it is also a space. But also we are saying it could be an organization. It could be an NGO, it could be a trade union, it could be a church, as long as it is doing work that is not being done by the government, and it is pushing for the area of struggle which it feels or one feels is better. But also there is other feelings which have come from colleagues here about people's power, also being part of civil society. But this has been underscored, and I think lastly by Wanjira, about it being active and patriotic. Civil society definitely cannot be quiet, and it cannot be silent. So if you are silent, then you might not consider yourself a civil society. Public arena and terrain of struggle, I think is key for us to be able to see that we are part of civil society. Now, I would want to have a broader discussions, and I would not want to go directly into us saying what roles of civil society, what roles have been played by civil society in the advance of democracy in Kenya. I would like us to look through ourselves. And I would like to see us that we have been in the struggle for democracy. For example, all of us here, like Regina. And I would like us to reflect on ourselves, where we have been, so that because it is upon reflecting ourselves, what we have been able to do over the years, we'll be able then to guide ourselves and others, people who are watching, what has been the role for civil society in Kenya, before even we come to see how will it be engaged and how will it be advanced much more. And I'll start with Regina. And I know Regina says initially, I think during her introduction, she says she's a committee director initially, definitely. Now, before you have been engaged, Regina, with the various civil society organizations that I know of. Recently with CRECO, I think CRECO, for those people who don't know it, I think is Civic Reform and Education Consortium. Correct me if I'm wrong. But also you'll be together with in Kenya Tuitakao movements, and I know you have associated yourself with other civil society organizations pursuing for democracy and change and justice in all facets. Now, Regina, would like to know, and you tell us your experiences in these organizations and others you have been involved, and what do you think has been the role of civil society in the advancement of democracy through your own experiences?
Okay, it's an interesting question. So first, my former home was the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, which is a network of 20 plus civil society organizations, large and small, across Kenya, working on the issue of constitutionalism now. Before we got a constitution, CRECO was working towards realizing a new constitution. And I think the heart of it was to ensure that citizens were not left behind by the constitutional reform process. So how do you ensure that citizens have the information, they have the access, and you facilitate them to participate in processes that are negotiated in Nairobi and not negotiated with your ordinary citizens? How do you ensure that their voices don't get lost? How do you make sure that they understand the information? So I think that is the spirit behind which CRECO was set up, with a particular focus on the education, awareness, and participation. And that, I think, could also be then what I would speak to CRECO's contribution to the democratic process. Is one of those things you can pick. So I think starting initially from what my experience has been, I think how it has made me feel. I think my relationship, not even my relationship, my experience has been twofold. So on one side, it has been a very humbling experience, and it has also been a very rewarding experience. Humbling because of the things I've seen civil society, when organized, are able to achieve is just amazing. The consistency with which people can push for 5, 10, 20 years and deliver something is, it's out of this world. If civil society was profit-making and money-making, it would be mega million top of rich, if you're talking about results of what civil society has achieved. So being able to be part of processes like the constitution-making processes, even if we're having challenges and having what we see with BBI right now, just that achievement alone after years and years of struggle with different spaces it's a very humbling experience. Number two is also the people in that space. And people is, whether it is at community level, just organizing themselves, pushing and agitating at the level that they are able to do, from the social justice centers, you had, I think, when people talk about the work that was being done around civic education and the constitution, you'd hear people talking about farmers in Mwea, rice farmers in Mwea, getting involved in that process, the things they're able to push, just as farmers, rice farmers able to push a constitutional agenda. So the people in this space are often incredibly amazing, and it can be extremely humbling, from academia to just your regular Joe, your regular Wanjiko. So that I think has also been very humbling and a great learning experience. And the other thing is also that it's a blessing. So Wanjiru talked about active citizenry and patriotic citizenry. And I think for some of us, it's something we get to do every day. And if you're lucky, you even do it as a job. So I think that's a blessing in disguise. Not even in disguise, it's a blessing in itself. to be able to exercise your civic duty. And if you're lucky, you get paid for it. If you're not lucky, well, you still sleep well at night knowing that you did what you did for your country, for your people, and you did the right thing. So that in a sense is very humbling. But the flip side of it is that it is also a very frustrating space to be in. And comrades here will bear me witness. Sometimes, you feel you're working for a broad agenda, a big agenda, you're working for the country, but it is very thankless. It is emotionally draining. It is mentally draining. It's physically stressful. And we can talk about comrades, who have suffered health issues, mental, physical, and otherwise, for being part of the struggle. Financially draining, because it's not an area where you can consistently get economic sustenance. So either you have a side hustle or you're employed or you have to figure yourself out. But also we forget that in the civil society arena, whether organized or unorganized, that it is people, human beings with the same needs that all other human beings need. That is often forgotten. And the expectations on people, on activists, human rights defenders, or anyone who is pushing an agenda for their community is very high and can take a lot. So I put that in context so that we understand that the struggle for democracy comes at a cost. Sometimes the cost is individual, sometimes the cost is collective. But there's, I think it goes without saying that the contribution, I think, in the Kenyan context has been immense. And there are things we can point our fingers to that have been great achievements for civil society. There are also things we can point to where civil society could have done a little bit better. And those are struggles we continue to struggle with, and we must, hopefully by the end of this conversation, I also hope to have a clearer way of how we do that.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you so much, Regina. I think before we give the other participants, I think we will first of all ask William Olo Janak to introduce himself. He has come in late. Karibu, introduce yourself, Olo Janak, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Then we shall wait you to relax a little bit before we come to your question.
Okay, sorry that I got into this late. Actually, I was still in traffic. Then I decided to branch off to at some place here. And then when I got in, it was noisy. So I decided to come back to the car. So I'm doing this from the car, and the lighting is not very good. But my name is William Olo Janak. I am a journalist and a media trainer. I'm also the chair of the Kenya Correspondents Association. But I would like to say that in a way I've been involved in a lot of struggle around governance issues, and therefore the discussion that we have here is is something that is extremely close to what I've been doing and to my heart.
Great, thank you, Janak. You'll come in later definitely with a response to your particular area. This, first of all, we are trying to get personal insight and personal reflections of the comrades here who have been long time in the struggle, just to get their feelings of what there has been before we come to the broad questions, which will concern all of us. We have all been located in various places. And now it's you, Rachel Mwikali. I know you for many years, and you have been actively engaged in various struggles, and mainly the ones that are located in the grassroots. And this is community-based struggles that you have been championing so much. But this is also interesting because apart from grassroots human rights initiatives that you have been involved with, you have been in top or big organizations like the ones you have mentioned, We Effect, Young Women Leaders Initiative, Amnesty International, movements, you've been in them so much. But now, having come from that grassroots background and still retaining your background orientation, what have you seen has been the role of grassroots human rights initiatives in the advancement of democracy? Do they have a role to play? Have they been ignored? Have they been vibrant? And how do those grassroots advocacy initiatives link up with the national and international human rights agencies to push for democracy over the years?
That's a good one, Juki, and a tough one. First, also for clarity, like on this one, I'm talking as Rachel Mwikali, not as representing the big mainstream, but as Rachel Mwikali, the activist, Rachel Mwikali, the organizer, and also with the constituency I'm coming from, which is grassroots community and activists. I just want to say something based on also like the topic, civil society and advancement of democracy in Kenya. Lesson learned, it's a lot. And first, one thing also to make it clear is that a lot of grassroots activists and feminist activists who are doing human rights work are not paid, including myself. It's a voluntary work, and most of us do it because either you've gone through injustice direct or indirectly, or the community we are living in, there's a lot of injustice happening. But also not forgetting that most of these, even national struggles, one thing that have to be clear, and you cannot take away that credit even if you don't get it, most of them are being contributed by the grassroots comrades directly as primary stakeholder. And for me to be in this point of sort of speaking of this kind of conversation, the other thing, even now with the current issues we are going through, like for example, when you look, even if you're talking about democracy also like constitutes of also like gender equality. And the way I said, my own understanding of the term civil society is also like the struggle of intersectionality. Because I think also as lesson learned, the problem is when we have single-handed cause, and you're like, if we are dealing with holding political leader accountable, you'll find sometimes efforts are not put, let's say, on women rights struggle. And if, for example, if you look even the women rights issues, they're not funded compared to the way governance and democracy work is done. So like being in those spaces or being in the spaces and being a grassroots person, one, I feel there's more work in terms of us even being more in those kind of space. And this one, with all like, one problem that we need to acknowledge is the indigenization of also struggle into programs. You cannot, like, for example, I usually give this an example. You cannot be planning how many women are going to be abused and put it in terms of statistic. And you cannot, if you also want also like in terms of citizen active participations, you don't need a human rights degree or PhD for you to be a human rights defender. So that's also another thing that we need to acknowledge in terms of, even if we activists are coming to this space of civil society, how is even our intellectual labor being compensated? Because sometimes you find the community has so much expectation in your family, people around you, and not everybody will understand what price people pay. It's like the same way people say, oh, madam activists kama kina Rachel kwa sauti kubwa, yeah. And for me, I'll own it unapologetically, even the ones who say, we are tukana sisi wanaume, if your man does wrong, kupasha. Na sitafadhali, also for me, that's democracy, where I can speak and call out men who are violent to women. But also like not forgetting in terms of also solidarity when it comes to work, folks from the grassroots comes a big time. We don't chagua which organization or which cause, because we know in one or another it affects us directly. Like for example, if you can look what Bunge la Mwananchi did when it was the campaign from Unga Dhati Bob. It was a national campaign, but comrades from Bunge were able to push to have Unga to 30 Bob, which became a national conversation. 2017, before election, I remember we were with Kina Kanywa, Kina CD, even Florence Kea there at Somboya, when we were like, no Unga, no election. People even like sort of made fun of me, even on Facebook. They're like, are you mad? Unga Rudi 30 Bob. And that time Unga was almost like was it to something, to 20? But you could see it became a national conversation. Even now politicians are using it as a political agenda, which food shouldn't be a luxury, should be right. But we're using it as a form of campaign, like if you elect me, now it's gonna be this and this. But also looking, for me now on this one, also have to be biased on what also have passion when it comes to gender equality. Like now the 2/3 gender bill. Now the parliament is unconstitutional going on. But you find a lot of time, even within the struggle, women human rights defenders and feminists do a lot of work even within the movement. But most of our stories usually erased, like are not given visibility compared to a male counterpart, Njuki, like you. You find like a lot of women do a lot of work in the movement, even unpaid care work in the movement that is not recognized as work, and it's work. but no one like, sort of centers that kind of conversation. And you would see it even like, for example, if now you're talking about democracy, even in terms of also media, and I'm happy Janak is here, even the way the media brings panelists in the media, they don't bring women, unless if it's a gender thing, they're like, oh, where's Mekali? But when it comes to politics, personally is political. Even me, I love politics because every struggle is political. Even feminism is political. Access to water is political. They don't bring in women as primary stakeholder. But also like a critique within the space now, especially where we are. It's important when also like grassroots, we are coming to these spaces. One thing that I've been always, even the spaces I'm like, I'm not here to Juni Bahati. I deserve to be in these spaces because I've worked to be in those spaces, and I cannot to be in those spaces if I'll be seen quote unquote as a token. But I want to be in spaces where my voice is taken as primary, as the one who is also living in Lavington, or as the comrade who's living in Runda. Because most of the time, what I've realized, even as lesson learned, sometimes even within our own space, we don't respect the work and the time and the labor that grassroots feminists or activists put in the struggle. We don't respect it. Something that we need to respect. We don't respect how to compensate even the labor, which also like now you have seen that with this COVID, I'm like, for me, even like with the conversation, I'm like, the people who have done a lot of work is grassroots activists and feminists with different spaces. I'm not saying the mainstream organizations that haven't done a lot, but I think even as points of also like of being able to know this is the role, for example, I'm in the board of Amnesty YWLI, this is the role Amnesty can play, this is the role also Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defender can play, but also where do we reach at the point whereby we're able to say we are complementing each other? Because I think sometimes also because of scarce of resources, instead of people also like seeing on how to build and add capacity, people within the space, when they see a grassroots coming, and this one I have to say it even in Swahili ndio isikie vizuri, because I know comrades zako hapa. Ni kama kuna tutu utaka tu sisi tuko mobilize na tuko tu pua tukaange tuko ghetto. Wataki watu mashinani wa grow. And that's the thing, even like for me, I'm usually very clear because this is our conversation, this is our space. Even if you're holding other people into account, also we need to be ourselves accountable within the movement. We need to be accountable even within our own comrades. Are we opening up the space? Because now if you talk about the shrinking civic space, there's usually 3 questions that I usually ask, or is it 2? What space are we talking about that is shrinking? Who is shrinking that space? And who has created that space? Because, for example, you're talking about shrinking space, and us, we have been organizing shrinking space for the longest time ever. Organizing without donor funding is not easy. Organizing knowing that you can come and not come back is not easy. Organizing knowing that sometimes a lot of your time when you're at risk, you have to live your own life, especially also if you're a woman human rights defender, like you have sometimes to be, you're in a catch-22 situation, your family, your kids, also your partner. So it's important to know also when you're talking about this shrinking space, whose space is it shrinking? Is it shrinking, for example, for mainstream because a bank account has been frozen? Or is it shrinking when I'm organizing there in Mathare, I cannot organize because the oppressor after me? Is it shrinking because, let's say, for example, the comrades are working in extrajudicial killings and they speak truth to power, the police assassins after them? Is it shrinking, for example, when you have a Repeal 162 case going to court and then the other comrades, they don't want to come for solidarity? Or is it shrinking when we feel this is sexy for a certain group of people to listen? Now, like currently, there's Geneva Consensus Declaration that Kenya signed last month, 20th. How many civil society, even women rights organizations, have sort of come and say, let's protect this, the right of women? And also because it goes back to democracy still and governance. How can Kenya go and sign a document that's going to criminalize access to abortion, safe abortion? Now it means if you're raped, you cannot access safe abortion. So we have to be very clear when also we look in terms of democracy and spaces that we sort of also engage. How authentic is also like our solidarity in that space. And for me, that's a key issue. I understand and I affirm civil society as a sector has done a lot, but I still feel even now it's the right time for us to defend, protect, and implement the Constitution. Where is our voice? I know things are tough. Now is the time. If now you are against the constitution, you're called the other team of a political side. Okay, call me the other team of political side, because I believe as Mwekali, we have a progressive 2010 constitution and you need to protect it. And if you look in terms, and the other comrades that are listening, in terms of also like how the first and second liberation was done, people had sometimes to be allies with also political parties or political leaders that are very progressive. But I don't understand why at this time, especially if you are in our generation, when you feel you want to build allies, there's that criminalization. And I'm saying this in terms of, I don't want to be mistaken. I'm not supporting being partisan. That one have to be clear. But in terms of political ideology alignment, how are we organizing that? Because if we don't do that, we are going back to what you comrades who came before us fought for. And now we are feeling we are in that period of starting enjoying the fruits of what people paid sweat and blood, and now it's been taken away. So for me also it's a matter of also like, it's important. If it's a mainstream organization, just know this is my role. If it's a church, because also we have seen also churches are also part of civil society. But nowadays churches have turned out also to be something different, like a political or partisan alignment of pushing some political that are not progressive agenda. So also like we need to ask also, where is the role of the church in this, in terms of protecting human rights, democracy, and also women's rights? Though also we may be in the position, like some of us will be like, church, as much as I respect religion, there are also some part in the church that I don't agree with in terms of women's rights. But the fact that we're in this space and this time, and Julie and also Regina and the comrades from Tribeless Youth, and also you, Njuki, can attest to this. And also Kenyans think, this is also a thing that I also have to critique Kenyans. And I've been clear in the shows that I go on radios these days, on Ghetto Radio on Tuesday, that activists are not in the pay slip of taxpayers' money. And that we should, the Kenyan public should not burden activists or feminists with all the issues. Like this COVID, we have seen a lot of activists that have been doing a fantastic work, even including my comrades like Jacinta and like Nasidi and the rest, and Lillian. But you find all the burden, what even an MC or an MP is supposed to be doing, now it has been forced now active to sort of do everything. So it's also important, even for the public, when you're talking about democracy, when you're talking about like corruption money, what are the now active citizens doing? What are we doing? We should not say we are waiting for the activists, they talk, or when these activists get this and this. Also should not romanticize poverty in activists. Because that's the other thing also with lesson learned. People are romanticizing us activists being poor.
Right.
So I don't talk much. Let me give other people to speak, and then I'll contribute. And I hope I'm making sense.
Great. Thank you very much, Rachel. I think that's been a deep and elaborate contribution, capturing many other areas. We shall come back later to see the lessons learned properly, because you have talked about lessons learned, but that will be almost like the tail end of this conversation. But thank you so much for that powerful and deep interjection. I will come back now to Jabu, and Jabu is young, definitely, when you compare with some of us here. You are young, and your generation is considered today in the current, in the last year census, the young people below 35 were seen to be almost 75.1%, 75% of the Kenyan population, almost jumping from 61 that we had almost about 10 years ago to 75. It's a big number, and I know you are in Tribeless Youth, but also you are initially with Inuka. Now, what I wonder is, and all of us will wonder, how do the youth leverage or make use of the energies, the massive energies that we have with the youth, the innovation that we have with the youth all over the country, from rural and urban, and their numbers in the advancement of democracy in this country? How do they do it? Or do we say that the youth, like many other Kenyans, are sucked up in tribal politics, following tribal leaders and tribal lords, and they have no space of their own? What's your experiences?
Well, thank you so much, Njuki. Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
I cannot
awesome.
see.
All right, Sawa. Awesome. So thank you so much, Njuki. Now, one thing that I'd love to say is that in regards to the question, I want to tell you that it's shocking that the average age of the Kenyan youth population is actually 19. In Uganda, it's just under 16 years. But yet, as uh, uh, as as far as East African countries are concerned, young people in Kenya are severely underrepresented in politics and or in other issues that actually matter to them. Basically, in this country, young people are tired of making statements. Young people in this country want to make impact and achieve change and inclusion. But what our leaders have done is, our leaders or the political elite, what they have done is they have not marginalized us, because marginalized is a term that we've been using time and again. We've been excluded completely. If you walk through the spheres of this nation, you can actually see how hopeless young people are in this country. No jobs, no sense of hope at all. So basically, engaging young people, whichever way, socioeconomically, politically, plays a very crucial role in strengthening democracy of our country. So what I'd love to say in regards to your question is that Kenyan youth will and are a significant share of Kenyan's population for this foreseeable future. So what our country needs to do is developing and implementing appropriate strategies and policies and programs to mitigate the risks and challenges that that the young people in this country face, and they must be actually a priority than than they currently are, because any failure to provide appropriate opportunities for this large segment of our population, it can be very disastrous and can have enormous economic, political, and cultural, social consequences. So engaging young people, who are the majority of the population, is no longer actually a choice. It's really imperative for the development process of our country. So that is why every single day of our entire life we keep on saying there is nothing about us without us. We need to be on the table. We don't have to be on the menu. We should be among the people actually making decisions for ourselves. Number two, you asked about young people being sucked into tribal politics. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry to say this, but I'll keep on repeating this as long as I'm alive, and until the day that this country realizes what democracy is, and until the day democracy stops being a fallacy. Every single 5 years, what we do in our country is not an electioneering period. It's not an election. I call it time and again an idiot festival. You ask me why? Because we actually, as young people, get sucked into the tribal politics. We are the mirror image of the leaders we elect. I'd want every one of you to actually look at who is your member of parliament, who's your member of county assembly, who is your governor, what have they done? What are we doing as young people to reprimand them? And then ask yourself, are you doing enough? Are you the only person who actually standing up to talk? Is there anyone backing you up? Are young people sitting kwa mawe and then saying, you know what, if people, quote unquote, in civil society or the activists are always enda kwa street for us, then I'll just be quiet. That is why I call it an idiot festival, because no matter how much we drum it into the heads of other people, nobody is willing to actually toe the line and say, let's call a spade and do this. So when you asked about young people being sucked about tribal politics, I'll dare tell you that when Kenyans cast their ballots after every 5 years to pick a president, whatever, governor, senator, the roles played by ethnicity and tribalism are very decisive. Time and again, Kenyan politics has been characterized by ethnic tensions since independence, since 1963. We all, as in seasoned people like you, Njuki, and you're a scholar as well. People like Regina can actually attest the kind of violence that we've been witnessing time and again since 1992, slightly 97, and then we made it to us in 2007, because it was not until 2007 that the demons of tribalism really flared up after the national elections, which left more than 1,000 people dead and thousands replaced, displaced, maimed, and everything. So you can actually tell the people who were actually used in that particular time were young people who were used to actually defend Mtuwetu. That is why we have the Mtuwetu syndrome. So yes, young people have been sucked into this, and basically ethnicity and identity, they matter more than a generation. When it's election time, young people lose their minds. Younger voters will always say, young people in this country, you walk in every corner of this country, young people will always say that we're not going to vote along identity lines, tribal lines. But when it comes down to that electioneering period is when you can see that there's an element of identity and how they're voting. So when we as the youth, bottom line is, if we as the youth can be able to speak with one language, we can be able to come up and demand and come up with demands, because we are the young people, we are the excluded ones. We can come up with demands for our rights, and the different languages that we speak, that the politicians often use to confuse us and turn us into animals, we can actually, for example, use one universal language that young people use, Sheng. One cultural activity or few cultural activity that young people use, art, to make sure that we speak in one voice so that we cannot actually succumb to these tribal pressures. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jabu. I think that is elaborate and deep insight that you've given us on the role of the youth. But of course, we shall come back to you later with some questions, because two questions will come in top of my mind. Is that why is this idea of the youth that they must be invited, they must be engaged? Who will engage them? Is it not time that the youth will take over the mantle by their own designs without being invited? And of course, that will be answered maybe at some point. But also, I agree with you. There is always these considerations that what we have in every 5 years in Kenya is, somebody called it not really an election, but a tribal census that we have, ethnic census, where the tribal lords come and say, vote for me, and us, we follow blindly. So I think that is agreeable within many circles. But we shall come to see all this population of the youth, 75% we said from the beginning, what role can they much more play within the civil society in the advancement of that democracy? We shall come back to that later. The other person I'll come up with also is Wanjiru, but also she's a young, she falls in the same bracket. She will not speak so much about the youth. Of course, she will speak, she might touch the areas also we have touched. But I know much more from the social justice movement. And I see the way they have started the social justice centers and the movement as being a vibrant and innovative and a deeply ideological platform that has gone beyond the discourses we had before with human rights. It talks of a just and democratic society, and not only about a human rights state, but it goes beyond justice issues. Now, Wanjiru will tell us what has been experienced so far of the social justice centers and the movement itself since its vibrancy in the advanced democracy in Kenya. And then you will see with the ideology of social justice, of a just and democratic society, is ideology important for us to have genuine and meaningful democracy in the country? So you will speak about that all those kind of questions, Wanjiru. So karibu.
Asante sana Njuki. The social justice movement, I didn't know you're going to put me in a spot to talk about our movement.
Yes.
I had prepared my mind to speak on democracy, like from a national level. So let me switch my mind speaking about democracy in our movement. I think there's democracy. I think people are given a chance to vote for their leaders, but I also have to say we are working on that, especially on center coordination. Find that you've been a center coordinator since the center started, and there's a sense you probably feel like you are the one entitled to be coordinator. So I have to say it's something that is still in its initial stages. This is our 3rd year. We are still expanding. Last week, we opened a new justice center in Dagoretti. So I like this form of organizing because when we are talking about democracy, it's all about inclusivity at the end of the day, that everybody's voice and opinion is heard. So we figured out that democracy is actually zero without a citizenry that is informed, that is active, that is ideologically clear. If we have all Kenyans educated on their rights and on their power, their constitutional power, Article 1, to exercise it directly or indirectly, that the community, the civil society space is not reserved for the likes of myself and Kina Mikali and those of us who are here, because when I was younger, before I joined the space, when I heard of civil society, in my head, it sounded like a space reserved for other people. It didn't feel like I could be part of the civil society until, and I want to say a lot of thank you to Bunge la Mwananchi, which was really there when we were starting our center in Mathare Social Justice Center. I remember organizing the community dialogue and inviting my community, of course, and the Bunge la Mwananchi comrades, and how they came and made the dialogue vibrant. It was such a wonderful experience to have that solidarity. And it felt like I want to be in this space, that these people love their country so much. They're so vigilant about what's happening in this country. And that is how I found myself. But had I not been involved in any way, I don't think I would have found myself in civil society, kwa sababu siwezi sema ni kuna gatekeepers kwa movement, kuna watu wataki, vile tu Rachel alisema, wase wa mtaani, kuna role yenyu mnacheza in civil society. So, and I do not want to, I'm really avoiding lamentation in my conversations. I've also noticed that we like to lament a lot, even when we can actually make things happen by our own. We have everything at our disposal. What really stops us? When we say as a civil society, we don't need to be registered. When we say the Constitution accords us all the sovereign power to exercise it directly or indirectly, well, why are we lamenting? Why do we need to say, oh, we need to be included? We don't need, we are not crying out to anybody. And it's time the Kenyan youth actually take up our political space even, because there's not one political youth organization in the country. We're always finding ourselves in places where we are tunapangwa. We are always finding ourselves like, oh, we need a few youths here and there. We need to kuonekana uso ya youths, but I'm challenging the youths of this nation. And I want to disagree with my comrade Kidogo. I don't think this generation, have this thing of mtu wetu, kabila yetu, or anything. To be very honest, even in my organizing in my community, Pale Kosovo, we really are out of that tribal thing. Even in university, when I'm having my conversation with my comrades, we feel like it's our parents who have that thing of this is our tribe, this is Mtwetu, but this generation is actually clear about what needs to be done, what should be done. And this was demonstrated in the Sabasaba March for Our Lives. The young people came out, and it is the young people who said, you know what, guys, we are going to march until we are tired. We're not going to stop. I saw a youthful population that is ready to fight for their nation. And I decided, you know what, we are not going to be lamenting about things in our country. We can organize ourselves and become one political force to reckon with in this country. So the social justice movement, I like its model of organizing. I like that justice centers are mushrooming everywhere, but I would like even more that they are grounded in the right ideology. I would like even more that with every justice center that is open, political education classes begin immediately, because what we have been lacking all this time is a community that is clear and that is empowered and that is grounded ideologically. Once we get those aspects right, I don't think we're going to have any problem with democracy. I don't think we will have problems like inclusivity, all those issues that we are saying have been sidelined. The two-thirds gender rule, when we have conversations about that, we'll find out that actually, if we look at this thing carefully, we are fighting for the men, because the census has has shown us that the Kenyan population is mainly women, and we all know it is the women of this country that give their time and sacrifice early mornings to go and vote. Now, if we had a pact as women of Kenya to only vote for women candidates, believe you me, it will be the men crying for two-thirds gender role representation. What's happening in Rwanda right now, we have more women representation. So when we begin having this conversation amongst ourselves, conversations affecting our country, conversations like the illegality of the BBI, we were not consulted as the people. It feels, every time I see BBI being pushed by the people in government, I cringe. I feel disrespected as a sovereign citizen, because this is not for us. So many things are going wrong in our country, yet this is what that is being pushed by the political elite. Now, if we had activated active citizenry and an organized civil society, we all need to put our capes away and bring all our energies, all our expertise, all of us together, so that tunaweza pigana vizuri kwa nchi. Like what's happened in the 2002, the civil society came together kumtoa dictator Moi. But as long as there's this fragmentation within ourselves, we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to make any effort. So I would like to push for an umbrella of all civil societies coming together. There's no official opposition in our country as we speak. In fact, I am more concerned about the gains we have made through democracy being reversed, because we are at that point in our country. People fought for the Constitution of Kenya. People are fighting not to have this BBI, but we've gotten to a point where the political elite actually feels like they are the one with the sovereign power and sovereign. They can just wake up and say, in 5 days, we are going to start collecting signatures. Who told you? You know, if the citizenry was awakened and aware, we would be like, this is not what we're going to do with this money. We are going to probably channel it to all jobless youths, or pump up our education, our health system. Doctors are on strike and things like that. So for me, whatever we do, we must focus on empowering communities and uniting our struggles if we want real change. Otherwise, all these other things will be patching up. Ni kama nguo imeraruka, tunashona hapa na pale na pale. We need a new dress, in short. So yeah, I hope I have answered your question, Juki.
Thank you very much. You've done very, very well, even gone deeper than what I expected. I think, of course, you don't always disappoint. You're always on top of the issue, and also to locate the issue of ideology that we cannot talk much more about the democracy. We don't talk about the grounding of that movement ideologically, but also you talk about the need for us to keep organizing and for us to have an umbrella of civil society movements that will be able to tilt the balance in a huge way. We shall come back to those questions definitely, mainly in terms of lessons learned. When you say fragmentations, umbrella body, those could be some lessons learned and maybe way forward. But before then, we will want to come to the veteran himself, Olo Janak, who was late to come in. And Janak comes from the background of the media. And he's being the chairperson of Kenya Correspondents Association, and having seen that this the media is normally recognized as the fourth estate, and there have been key players in democracy. I think Janak will remember Society, Jeuga Tabaki, Financial Review. You remember Gitovi Manyara. You'll remember comrades who have been the struggle for democracy using the platform of media. And even broadcasters. Give us an overview of the role of media and other groups, civic engagement groups you have been engaged with in the advancement of democracy in Kenya over the years, so that we can also learn from the current. Yeah. So karibu ndugu Onyango, ndugu Olo Janak. I hope you're on.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm on, but I'm also a bit struggling to hear you.
Yes, you've heard me. I was saying, have you heard me? Can I repeat?
Please, just go over it briefly.
Yeah, I have said that you are veteran media personality in this country. Yourself, being the chairperson of the Kenya Correspondents Association, and we recognize the media as a fourth estate, and it has been a key player in the civil society. And we have had experiences of the role of media over the years in democracy. We remember colleagues like Toby Manyara with his earlier publications like the Nairobi Monthly, Financial Review. We have Pius Nyamora with his Society magazine. We have many other media people who took the banter of democracy forward and pushed it towards great levels of advancements. Now, we would like you to briefly give us an overview of your experiences and insights into the role of media and other groups you have been engaged with in the advancement of democracy in the country. Am I clear now?
Yeah, I think it's clear. I think we all recognize how important the media has been, and you indeed have mentioned a number of people who have been involved, both as activists like our colleagues Rachel and Wanjira and all the others who are struggling from the grassroots, and of course those who have been within the media sector, Imanyara and all the others. What I would like to say is that the media has been useful. The media has been useful in the struggle for democracy, because the media it is through the media that we do the conversations. If, for example, there was no media, then the different facets of this country in terms of what they are saying, even the BBI and so on, would not be understood. The media transports the message from different parts of the country, brings it forward to the national platform, and then from there it is taken up. The media amplifies voices, and you can easily see this, especially when I don't know if it was Wanjira or somebody else who talked about the Moi regime and so on. In fact, the media played an important role in terms of the struggle for the second liberation. And, we get back to that and see the number of people who suffered. I remember that was around the time when I was beginning my media work. And sometimes we would be going to Tumaini House, where most of some of the media were based, especially what we call alternative media. As a media person, I don't want to talk about what they call, gutter press, because gutter press was a term that was coined by Kamoto, and it was to deride the media. For me, I look at what we call the mainstream media. Nation, Standard and all the others, the legacy media sometimes we call it. And then when some of those had felt that they couldn't tackle certain issues, then other media emerged to take up space and to be more robust. And that especially happened in the 1990s. We had Finance by Njehu Gatabaki. We had Society by Pius Nyamora and his wife Lois. We had Nairobi Monthly, which was started. Many people do not know that it was Imanyara who actually started the Nairobi Law Monthly. We had Lengo, we had Target by the church. The church then, I've had I don't know if it was Mwikali or somebody else who talked about the church, The church then, because the church was part of the struggle, and you could hear voices. Every Sunday, we were looking forward to when the church would speak as media people, because then we would be able to pick out. If, for example, you were at the All Saints Cathedral, then Bishop Gitari spoke. Or if you are in Eldoret, or if you are in Kisumu and Okulu spoke, Eldoret Muge spoke. For us in the media, those were critical voices that we needed to project. And therefore, I'm saying that the media did do an important duty, and still does. And I'm just reflecting on that past. And there are media people who have suffered because of efforts to fight for democracy. We know, for example, how many times Imanyara was arrested and detained because of his involvement with the media and activism in terms of governance. We also know, for example, that Nyamora and the others, they were all arrested. David Makali and Bedan Mbugwa were arrested and one time jailed because they wrote, then just when the people was beginning, they talk about judicial lynching when they thought that the judiciary had not brought out certain things that were critical, and they termed it judicial lynching at that time. We know that Otieno Makonyango, who was an assistant editor at The Standard, was arrested in the newsroom and jailed. We know that Wallace Gishere was thrown off from his fourth floor apartment by security agencies, and then he broke his back and lived on a wheelchair all through. It was because of his work as a media person. Yeah, so under those circumstances, the media, in fact, we reflect on the media as having done quite some work and for the national good around that time than probably what we have now, because the problem that we have now, and I think which we are discussing, is the fact that every aspect of society is fragmented. I have had the issues around civil society, which have been part of, and I know that even now, civil society is speaking at cross purposes in terms of the national dialogue. We cannot have a common position. I've just come from a civil society virtual meeting, which is planning something around devolution and BBI. And if you hear the voices, you can almost be sure that even the communique that will come out of that probably will not have, uniformity in terms of positions. So coming now to where we are, the media still retains an important position in terms of mediating dialogue across the country. And the media has not always done well. That one we really must recognize. And I think in 2017 and so on, we have tried to critique ourselves. Sometimes it is not easy to critique yourselves because there are people in the media who will defend certain positions. There are others who will be more robust in terms of looking at how things are. And therefore you find that, there are moments when the media have come out. For example, in terms of issues of corruption, you find that the media have come out to talk about KEMSA. The media have come out to talk about Anglo-leasing. The media have come out to talk about NYS and so on. If it wasn't the media, some of those things would be swept under the carpet. And therefore, for example, every national dialogue, every major national dialogue, be it on elections or like on BBI or the referendum, the media, the different outlets have played an important role. And I'll probably refer, so that perhaps I give chance to the other discussants. I know that even through the Kenya Correspondents Association, when we were talking about the Constitution, it came round to a point where issues around the Constitution were getting lost. And because the Kenya Correspondents Association consists of journalists on the ground, we linked up with the committee of experts, had a 4-day meeting in Nanyuki, and decided that within 3 months that were remaining to the referendum, we needed to help shape up issues so that at funerals and so on, we'd not be talking about the side issues. We'd be saying, what are the critical issues? The questions that we'd be asking the politicians and so on were pointed in terms of helping the citizens to understand with clarity what the issues were around the Constitution. Yeah, so this was important. And what would be important, in my opinion, is that sometimes we want to invite the media to spaces merely as observers to report. The media need to be carried along. The media need to be sensitized, because sometimes media people, journalists, are very busy. Editors are busy in the newsroom. Journalists are busy chasing things left, right, and center. So unless they are also sensitized about issues, then some do not take up, that some may not project the issues the way they ought to be, for the citizens, because they're also struggling with many things. And you see, what we are talking about a fairly youthful group of journalists now. Rachel and Wanjira are talking about youth. And there are many issues to talk about, as youths. But sometimes the youth talk as if being youth is forever. No. Youth cannot be forever. It is a fairly transient. We were there. I mean, we were also youth anyway, But you see, there are certain realities that the youth are romanticizing certain things. And that also happens even within the media. We have a category of journalists whose view of the society is not even informed by history. They have never gone there. And the kind of political education we need across the country is also required for the media, because some of them are coming out of colleges and purporting to host talk shows when they even never know what happened in 2007. You know, the post-election violence. They have no idea. So how can they host a talk show even on the discussions around Kenya and the hostilities and some of the problems that we are struggling with when they have no idea? You know, so I think in a nutshell, I would say that the media continues to play an important role. I think we need to carry them along. Over the last 6 months, from around February up to more, actually up to last month or the other month, I was involved, and I've been involved in trying to bridge the media and civil society, because there's a bit of difficulty around there. And we have been doing some little project on what we call enhancing CSO and media collaboration. Because if we did that, then we'd get back to the situation where the civil society largely, perhaps not all, and the media would probably look at what is the national good, you know, because the national good often gets lost, and especially when we talk about the ethnicization of discussions or some of the political activities. So it is possible for the media and the civil society to work together. And this also requires very conscious effort, because, and understanding that we must build across, rather than civil society merely calling media for press conference. You know, they have done all the programming, they have done all the implementation. Now they are releasing a report. The media have not worked with them. They have no idea what they are discussing. Then, the media then comes around, especially senior, they will say, the NGO type. You know, they simply dismiss the, and they think that NGOs are raising money using the clips from the media or the audio visuals or YouTube, and say they send the links to donors and raise money, and then there's no media component in terms of building their capacity. So there is a huge discussion around there. We need to narrow some of those. Yeah, thanks for the moment.
Yeah, good so much. Thank you so much, Janak. I think that is quite decisive. You've been the field, that way you've got such a beautiful and clear grasp of the role of media and democracy, democracy. And I agree with you completely that we have normally treated the media like a commercial break, that once we have done our part, wherever we are as politicians, we now call the media to cover us. So that now that media itself, which has not been involved in the discussions, is seen just like an extension. It's not seen like a part of the process. And that was, of course, has given the media itself the dubious distinction of also being able to ask for favors. If you are calling us to your party, then you must be able to pay us or to give us something. I think that is a whole dilemma which we have in this country. But before we come to the main questions, because also we are rushing on time, I would like to look at some comments which have been done here, and then I will ask you maybe some few general questions before we come to the lessons learned and the way forward. Infinix, I think Infinix Hot, I can read from the chat on Zoom. You are saying there are several facets of democracy, the ballot being one of them and the most outstanding and devastating. And then you're asking, why can't we explore and internalize other humanizing facets like consultations, dialogue, and consensus building to enjoy democracy? And then also, I think Regina also agrees with Mikali, for us to be able to see then how inclusive has been this civil society. And then also there is still from Charles Wamba, to an extent, the professionalization of the CSOs hasn't helped much. The NGOs have become more linear in their programming to an extent. They cannot respond adequately to emerging issues, and this is the pain of human rights defense. And then Wanjiru responding says that it's good that NGOization of the struggle has been part of the problem. But now I come to a question which I wonder how Janak, how Ohenjo will be able to respond. I think you will guide us, Sheila. There is a question Q&A from Ohenjo, who wants to follow up with William Janak on what he has contributed. Is he on chat or will he speak? Sheila?
No, actually, it's a question that is posed. So you just read out the question, and then now that Janak is the person who's representing the media fraternity, he could maybe just answer for us.
Can you read for me? Because is it on Facebook?
No, it's on the.
I don't see it. Can you read? Maybe around you can see it.
Okay, let me just read. Just picking up from Jabba's and Nigeria's conversation, is there a challenge of messaging to successfully mobilize the people movement for change? Media has been a key player. However, in the changed context, how should the message designed for better impact?
Yeah, that comes to Janak straight away. In brief, Janak respond to Ohenjo. I suspect this could be Ohenjo Nyangori, could be many Ohenjos, but whatever is Ohenjo. Just please try to respond to Ohenjo.
Yeah, you see, mobilizing must be around certain key issues. You know, what are the uniting issues around which we need to mobilize? You see that, eh? Because you see, the issues that we have are polarizing generally. So if we are talking we are saying we mobilize, you know, under the Moi regime and Kanu regime, people could mobilize against dictatorship. People could mobilize against detention. People could mobilize against, you know, violation of human rights. And generally, most Kenyans felt that there was something wrong. Now, do Kenyans feel uniformly that something is wrong? You know, now in terms of the uniformity of thought, if you look at social media, for example, you know, you will see the discussions on social media reflecting the divisions that we have had around elections. So that when one, for example, right now, before, even under the handshake, there are those people who will say, no, you know, we are on recess, you know, pambana na hali yenu. You see that kind of thing. I mean, so the national problem is not being seen. It is being seen through those prisms. The people who are tear gassed are now saying to the people who enjoyed when they were tear gassed that, okay, fine, look, this is what we are telling you. So, you know, it becomes very difficult, therefore, to mobilize people together because people are looking at things through different prisms. And even within the handshake, for many people, the handshake is a temporary truce between two principles. It doesn't speak their language. And they are just hanging out there and saying, okay, fine, now, I mean, let's wait and see where it will go. So what I would like to say is that even media mobilization is extremely difficult because media is part of the divided Kenyan society. Who owns the media? Media ownership is, you know, I can refer you to Njuki. Most likely you are aware of the research that was done through Internews. That was 2012. The booklet is entitled Factually True, Legally Untrue. Factually, who owns the media? The politicians or their cronies, but legally you will never trace it to them. So they pull the strings. In terms of difficult conversations like what we are having now, most likely the media will be looking at survival mode. And with the COVID now, and you know that the media, the government has the biggest advertising budget. And currently, over the last 5 years or more, it has consistently been holding nearly 2 billion in unpaid advertising rates. So if each media is looking at how do I survive in this difficult environment, will my check be paid, you know, for the advertising that was done the other time? Or somebody connected to the media owner will call senior media people and say, hey, look, apo enda pole pole, or else we'll lose out. So I think we need to shape national conversation in a way that is fairly encompassing and is pinching every one of us so that we are able to take risks in our spaces, whether it is in the media or the other spaces, so that we say, no, we are rising above, you know, some of the other challenges that we see, you know, ethnicity and the, you know, even issues of class. Within the civil society you have had, there's some sort of class struggle. I mean, you can call it, you know, the social movements and the more established civil society and whether or not they are giving space. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Janak and even Ohenjo, for the question. I think you've done it so well. I will now come to the final segments of these discussions. But before we come to that segment, I would like us to reflect on the questions you have raised much more. I have heard people talking about fragmentation, both within the NGOs, the civil society, and the media. It's like we are talking of a glorious past. It's like we are talking about Muge, we are talking about the media, why it was active. We are talking about the civil society uniting to make sure that we have multi-party in this country, 1981, the civil society uniting together to make sure that we have new elections, and the one that Kibaki won in 2002. We are also seeing we are also seeing the new constitution being pushed on by civil society. Now, I'd like to ask all of you, have we lost the fire that was in civil society? Why don't we now find an umbrella movement like the way it was before? Or are we just there for work in the NGOs now? We have no cause that we are pushing on. Have we lost the fire? How can we regain our voice? Are there emerging issues that can unite the civil society? Because seeing that they were powerful earlier and in the past, they could also be powerful today. But they are not powerful, that's what we are saying. They are fragmented, including the media. What do you think has been lost? And why do you think we are such fragmented? And this question can be responded by all of you very fast, so that we also give the other chance to the lessons learned, but also to the way forward. So any of you can pick it up. Why is there fragmentation? Why is there no umbrella movement that can come to us very strongly? Anyone can come briefly. Rachel, I can see you are smiling. Come in, please.
Njuki. At least now you're telling me you're smiling, because I've been put in this zone. I'm like, you're making me feel I'm old. Do you have any youth, eh? Missing, eh? What may I propose? So, I'll say it's both. Yeah, there is fragmentation. At the same time, we're not giving up. But also, like, the fact I'd said, there are a lot of emerging voices doing a lot of fantastic work and doing a lot of amazing work, but they don't reach the main sort of space, so people are not seeing who they are. And for this also, like now, based on the question we had asked, in terms of also inequality, I have to be clear on this. Inequality within the movement, even. It's like we're talking about democracy, but also we know in civil society, there are leaders who have been leaders almost the same age as the political elite. They're not giving up the leadership. And this majority are men. We have to acknowledge that. And it's not like we're not acknowledging the kind of work they have done, but the fact also we need to have that intergenerational leadership transition. We need to have that transition that we're able to say, yeah, we are having these emerging voices, how do we support? Because the moment also we have these words, and I've been listening when you're going with conversation, who is the new cadre, who is not the new cadre? Like for me, I usually call out people, call me young cadre or emerging voice, because I'm like, sometimes it's used as a tokenism for people, or Mwikali feels that you're not bringing as what Regina example. Let me, Regina, use your example. As what Regina is bringing is not what Mwikali is bringing, because Regina has been there. Which also now makes people feel na contribute kiasi gani, but still people are contributing. And the thing also in terms of the way I said also, things also we have to understand why are movements fragmented. Is it the same way we are treating our comrades, or is the same way even in Kenya? I don't want to also be tough on our side, because also we know the struggle is not real, but it's the same way, like why are Kenyans not going to the streets, like the NSAS? We have been talking about police brutality, violence against women and girls. Why are Kenyans not going on the streets? And I said it, the moment we engineer struggles, it loses the whole idea. It becomes a matter of programs. And it becomes a matter of also dividing movements. And sort of takes me back to an article was written by Dr. William Tunga, like this time of pandemic. Like we have also to acknowledge the emerging voices, the contribution, what has been done. Yeah, and then also like the fact that as much as we're here as youth, because I'm also those youths that people are talking about, is not the burden. We should not burden youth for the things also has been done by older people, that youth must do this. But also recognize also about our history or our history. Where is most of the books hidden? Like if you're not for me, also like for the comrades who have been there before, and about Ukombozi also library, where we have these amazing books. Where can we get the Mwakenya books in town? People to be politically understanding why we are pushing things we are. Because reality, people think we are mad, including myself, people think I'm mad. But we are mad because of a reason we want to see a change. And why our comrades also sort of going on the other side, the way we say other side. I think it will be also like, what was your vision before you got into the movement? What made you to get into the movement? Because I think sometimes people get into the movement for different reasons. Either one is because someone is job 8 to 5. Maybe someone it's because they were say passion, conviction, you went through a lot of issues, you feel you need to do a change. Either because you saw your friend, or you saw, if now I become an activist, become this thing. And I think it's important to also like acknowledge fragmentation is there, but how do we sort of change strategy? Mwakenya organize in a manner of a disciplinary manner. How are you organizing? Because also discipline needs time, needs perfecting within ourselves, needs support system. It's the same way, like why is Mwikali being consistent? It's because also I have a strong support system of friends. Not even people within the movement. Some are not even, don't identify themselves as activists. And it's both locally, friends, and other spaces. But if also we don't offer that kind, you see the way also churches or politicians do to their own people. Also, I think as a movement, we need to sort of support our own people to ensure like they have enough support. Like if in the 60s, in the 70s, when the other people used to go to exile, they had people supporting their family, the comrades. They had people who were also like taking care of their kids here and ensuring where they are, they get enough support. But now, my friend, upatikane Kongori, utajiongelesha. So you find you are a young person, you ended up like, you feel, like me, I'm less than 30 years, but I feel, maisha yangu ni kama mtu 50. But because you want to see that change. And I know it's majority of you also, like your youthful also life, people in the movement, you're giving this country, you want to see that change. But sometimes also it's like the way also the country sort of celebrates the heroes. You cannot tell me we have comrades that have been paying a lot to this country, and then when it reaches a land or something, we see our government giving people like the very media, like people who haven't, like you cannot put in the mantle of the struggle they have done. So let me let the others talk, but I feel it's also like an opportunity, even we ourselves, also the fragmentation, like also on my side will be, also as ourselves, we need to stop talking to each other. Let's make the space bigger. Mwikali, open up the space, not talk with your, don't talk only with the activists. It's like the way people do now, I'll borrow what Regina usually say in terms of religion. The way people, like the way Christ was able to mobilize followers. He started with 12, but how many followers are Christ are here in the world until today? It was through a process of recruiting more people and making them followers. How also do we ensure like we are bringing that kind of tool or a strategy that the churches uses? Why would people congregation fund churches, fund pastor? Like unapata watu wa kanisa wanalipia mpaka pasta nyumba, wanalipia pasta chakula, kila kitu, but they can't fund the movement. So we have also to understand that, because sometimes when it comes to donor things, also whose agenda is it in? Because for example, you as a community, let's say in Mathare, I'll say I want to fight violence against women and girls, but maybe someone else will be like, for me, that's not a priority. But for me, that's my priority as Rachel Mwikali. My priority is on feminist struggle, because until now, as much as I fight for those struggles, I get victimized, even into spaces. I get blacklisted, even the same civil society sometimes, or whitelisted, because of speaking truth to power. And that's why nowadays, even you will see most of us comrades are very specific which spaces we engage, because we feel we want to go to spaces that our voices are respected, our voices are taken with value and dignity as much as another comrades will be in. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Comrade Mwikali. I will now invite the other colleagues, all of them. What you will do is that you respond to the questions I ask, why we are fragmented, but also you will kind of being able to summarize from your own, because we are running out of time. You will also be able to summarize then if we are fragmented, what can be done? The old age questions, what can be done and to the civil society to avoid that fragmentation? And in your personal way, what would be the way forward? So you come in, colleagues, as a way of summarizing, answer the question, but also as a way of summarizing, so that we don't come back because time is running out of short with us. Then you'll be comfortable to have done some closing remarks. So anybody can jump in, and please be a little bit brief so that we can all speak. Yes, Jabu, is it you? Yes.
Yes, Njuki.
Yes.
All right. If I may briefly, about fragmentation, I want to agree with what Rachel has said. Civil society, once we started NGOizing civil society, is where we lost it as a country. We lost track of supporting the Kenyan citizen as the fourth estate, alongside the media, as the people who are actually trying to hold the citizens' voices and amplify them. So instead of civil society collaborating, we created differences. So that is where we lost it. So we are deeply fragmented because most people are actually trying to run their own different agendas. I'd want to say in a more selfish way. Even as we speak right now in this particular meeting, sorry to say, do we have people living with disabilities represented? No.
Yeah.
So you get it. So basically, we actually having our own selfish interests, which is something that does not go with. Basically, we're excluding the rest of the society. I don't want to dwell much on young people, but I want to dwell much on the bigger society. If we all as a country, as Kenyan citizens, could collaborate, merge, instead of having differences, then we can actually move our agendas forward as a country. So that is why I said, that is why I agree with what Regina had said earlier, that the moment we actually start dividing ourselves, then we will have nowhere to begin with. Remember, I think everyone remembers the, what was his name? Martin Nemola's quote during the post-World War, I think.
They came for me.
Exactly. He was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany who emerged as an outspoken public foe of Adolf Hitler. I mean, if we do not speak in one voice, then someone will come for you, and there will be no one left to speak for you. So we need to sit down and collaborate as members of civil society and as citizens as a whole. That way, we can be able to move ourselves forward. Lastly, we need to adopt what Rachel has actually said. We need to adopt history, storytelling. Can we teach our kids all these forms of the culture that was supposed to be engraved? Can we teach our kids about the history that was never taught to us? Can we embrace new forms of engagement? We have art, we have digital media platforms that have actually been taken by the political elite. Now, as citizens, we do not have any other forms of addressing our issues or putting our issues out there. Can we embrace this? I can go on and on, but I'd also, because of time, I'd want other people to actually contribute. But that would be my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mungeni. Thank you so much. Another colleague? Yes, Regina. I can see you've raised your hand. Yes, Karibu, Regina. Give us the closing remarks.
I'll try to be brief, and I think most of what requires to be said has been said by the spoken before me. And in my opening remarks, I think one of the things I mentioned was that civil society comprises human beings, people, with all their goodnesses, their passion, their commitment, their talents and their skills, but also all their flaws, their interests, and the influence of where they live, where they come from, how they were brought up, etc. So I think the first thing for us is to understand that and to accept it, and then we know how we work with it. That we will not always all be on the same page. We can work with those who are on a different page, but just knowing where they're coming from, and we use that to maximize on opportunities that exist. I remember when I was younger, being very frustrated with what I thought was not the correct behavior of comrades, especially comrades who were older than me and had been in the movement for a while. I just couldn't understand why they didn't hold the kind of values I thought we universally held. And I was venting these frustrations, I think, to Comrade Ombok. And Ombok told me, don't get depressed, don't cry, don't get stressed. Just understand that not everybody is in the movement for the same reason. For some, it is a means to an end. So sometimes we are lucky that some of these interests coincide and you can do something greater than what you wanted to do. So the feminist agenda comes together, the youth agenda comes together, the professionals agenda comes together, the trade union agenda comes together, and you're able to remove Moi. But if you go back to it, the individual interest, some people joined the movement not because they necessarily thought Moi was very bad or they thought dictatorship was bad, but it was bad for business. It was bad for them professionally. They couldn't make money. They couldn't run their business the way they wanted to run it. There were lawyers who could not practice their legal practice the way they wanted to do it and make money the way they wanted to do it. So it was in their interest to unseat Moi, and therefore their interest, though selfish, coincided with the general movement around constitutional reform and removing Moi. And so they provided services. They either, if they were not able to be at the front line and speak and stand and agitate, then they provided offices, they provided paper, they provided photocopying, they bailed people out of jail, they availed what was at their disposal. So I think the sooner we understand that, then we also don't get so depressed and stressed about why we're not able to come together. It's still a problem, it's still something that should concern us. But I think if we focus on the little struggles that we are working on, the battles that we're working on, at some point they come together. So where you are, do the best that you can and push it really well. At some point, I feel they come together. The second thing I wanted to say was around this challenge that we're always told that is civil society is dull. It's not as vibrant as the civil society of the 90s. And I used to catch feelings about it. But it doesn't affect me so much anymore because I am consistently aware of what people are doing in their small pockets, which is extremely amazing. And I think Mikali pointed to that. So others might not be aware because they're not in that space. But if we discuss various issues in these countries and who the first responders are, even COVID-19, who are the first responders who provided water, who provided soap, who provided information, who even started protesting when police were harassing guys, who started providing humanitarian support? It is civil society. And they didn't shout about it. We didn't do a video. We didn't put up billboards. You know, people just did their small things. Mikali, Wanjiro, you know, you all know people were changaing money on the side, you know, just from the justice centers or channeling contributions from the justice centers and redirecting them. And they're not making a big fuss about it. Extrajudicial killings. I think it is extremely powerful if on one day, just from the work of documenting and releasing a statement, which is hardly covered by the media, it results in the Inspector General calling Olal for a meeting. I think that, for me, is impactful. But you see, it is diminished, and it is not, because it's not BBI, it's not the national debate of everything else. It is given less value. That's why I liked that Mikali brought out what is the value of the effort that different comrades play and that different movements are bringing. It's not publicized, it's not, you know, there's no fanfare around it. So we feel that nothing is being done, and yet a lot is being done, not just in Nairobi, but in pockets of this country where you will never, ever hear anything. And I am lucky because the nature of my experience has been that I've been able to travel the country, but I'm also in very many networks, so I hear a lot of things. So I always feel like, no, but stuff is going on, stuff is going on. So why are you saying nothing is happening? It can't be compared to the 90s because that was a different time with different challenges. And this is a different time with different challenges. And I think we're also evolving and learning. So the role of young people, technology, etc., itatuonyesha mambo, which we are yet to see. I mean, if Kenyans on Twitter can just by tweeting cause government to retract a statement or to retract a policy, that's very powerful. It's the equivalent of the demonstrations of the 90s to a certain extent, you know, where universities would cause the city to be shut down, and this is done on social media. So it's also very different. And I always feel it's an unfair comparison. And part of it is also older comrades being stuck in the nostalgia of the 90s and feeling that things are not moving the way they want them to move because of what they did in the 90s. So they want to see that type of energy and not appreciating the context and the difference, I think, right now. I think, finally, the last thing I wanted to say is a lesson learned, and I think something that's important, it has been mentioned, is also to connect our struggles. Make sure we connect, to try where possible to connect our struggles. across structures. So whether it is horizontally or vertically, I think it's important. In as much as we've said NGOization of the movement has probably limited or killed the movement, I think NGOization of the organizations is also an opportunity that we have not fully appreciated. And why do I say this? Because if there are organizations that have the capacity to raise resources, to have offices, what we need, the accountability that we need from them is for them to know that they hold these resources for all of civil society and should avail these resources in support of all of civil society, okay? Diversity. So if CRECO has an office and CRECO is a civil society organization, if Mwikali needs office space or Wi-Fi for an hour, 1 hour, a week or something, I should be able to avail it without asking too many questions and feeling like I'm giving you. Because these are resources we hold in trust for everybody else who is not able to get an office. It is held in trust to make the movement move forward. And I think those are some of the things, those are some of the conversations we need to start having about how we share resources, how we share opportunities. There's enough, I think, for all of us, even as funding is reducing. I think there's enough for all of us to do things a little bit better. There was a thing that Wanjiru had mentioned about grounding in the right ideology. And I'm actually very happy that she's doing stuff with young children. One of the things I was looking at was my history books from way back when. That tells you how old I am. And I realized that the Form 2 textbook talks about, all manner of things. It talks about Kenya in the 19th century. Then it goes into agrarian, industrial revolution, blah, blah, blah. Then when it comes to government, it's a very tiny chapter. But in Form 2, the government chapter actually talks about multi-party democracy. So I don't know if that's where I got my fire from in Form 2. It actually talks about multi-party democracy, and it's actually fairly good. This is KIE textbook. But when you come to the Form 4 textbook, now to show you how we were being brainwashed in Form 4, when you come to the Form 4 textbook, it talks about Africa in the 20th century, then it talks about the rest of the world. Then when it comes to government, it talks about the philosophies of Kenya. You know which philosophies are there? Nyayo philosophy, Harambee philosophy. So in Form 2, we were discussing multipartyism and why opposition is good and what is the role of opposition and why we needed multi-party. And the role of the opposition is to fight against laws like the Chiefs Act. And then when we come to Form 4, when we're just about to finish and going to voting, we're told about the good philosophies that are Nyayo philosophy, Harambee. We're told about the police. And here even the prisons that are listed include detention camps as official prison, types of prison. So I started asking myself, what was the intention of sparking the light in Form 2? And then in Form 4, we bring it down. So that thing of grounding in ideology and truly understanding our history becomes very important. Not just for children, youth, young people, even for the older people, because I suspect that some of it is also skewed based on their experience in the 80s and the 90s and how they position themselves. So it's a conversation you need to have, which means that the struggle must be personalized. It's not enough to go and say, I'm working for the community. What is this community? It's people outside there, and yet people in your house don't understand what you're talking about, those values that you're espousing, or even do the things that you're trying to preach to other people to do. So it must also be very personalized. And then for the NGOs and where we have the 9-to-5 workers, I'd like to challenge that we think of it as an opportunity, that part of the orientation for registered formal organization for your new staff is that grounding in ideology. Let them spend 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, having conversations with those that were in the movement, understanding the history of the country and the true history of the country, debating and thinking about what their position is. And if they're not able to get it, then even as employees, we know how we deal with them. We know that these employees are 9-to-5er and they will deal with operational things and help us move the organization. But we know this other employee is an activist, they have the country at heart, and there's a different way in which we deploy them. So let's think of it as an opportunity. Thank you.
Beautiful. Hey, thank you so much, Regina. You've gone the whole breadth, including being a class teacher. Thank you so much. Yeah. Now we finally we are running out of time. We have two comrades. I think Wanjera, you will do it very briefly, and also we will see. Then we shall give back the ball to Sheila to do the closing remarks. Give us the overview, fragmentations, what can be done, and what are the lessons learned, and just as your way forward. Very briefly, Wanjera.
I think Regina has said 90% of what I wanted to say, and the other was covered by Rachel and Jabu. Allow me to narrow down on our history, Comrade Njuki, because I think this is a very vital part of even our organizing in the struggle. I did the same thing that Regina did, interestingly. I looked at the history books from Form 1 to Form 4. And for me, being Wanjera, it is because I realized once I came out of Form 4, and Gasheke gave me a book by Comrade Maina wa Kenyati, a prison notebook. And I read it and I felt betrayed at the kind of history I got at school, because it was the first time I was hearing about the atrocities that Moi committed, the struggle that our people went through for multi-party democracy, for a new Katiba. It was a whole new reality of our country that had been hidden from me intentionally. And that is why I started teaching history lessons to the kids that were coming to our center. And that is why I got this hunger to know more and more and more, and went to Kombozi Library and started reading. So even inculcating a reading culture amongst our people, because tumesocializewa ukishamaliza shule, bye-bye to vitabu. Very, very few of us actually enjoy reading. I know we can watch documentaries in other forms, but remaining informed is very important to inform our struggle. Right now, Ethiopia is at war. I don't know if many Kenyans are aware about that and how it's going to affect us, even as the civil society in our country. Fragmentation, I would say, is not something that is something that we can deal with. It is good to embrace diversity. I like that there's an angle of us dealing with feminism. There's an angle of us dealing with the police brutality. There's an angle of us now insisting on an umbrella organization. Right now, we have no official political organization, official opposition in our country. I know there's one in quotes, but in reality, we the people know that we are on our own. And there's a blank space that the civil society needs to fill. But now we are fragmented. We cannot say, as the civil society, we are going to flag this person, say, as our candidate, or we are going to, this is the position we are going to take on, say, BBI or the 2/3 gender rule, because just as the challenge that we are facing with ensuring an active citizenry is also the challenge we are facing in ensuring a vibrant. I know we are vibrant in our own small ways, but guys, we need to consolidate this in one big organization so that we can make sense, so that we can be impactful. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to make much effort. We'll make a lot of noise on social media and amongst ourselves when we meet over tea, but in terms of real tangible change, we need to unite and put in the time and effort and meet. And like, I like what Kongamano la Mageuzi is doing currently, holding pressers every Sunday, calling the government on false state of the nation addresses and saying, if the opposition party is not going to take up its place, we are going to take up that place. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. Also, because I'm seeing
Thank
2
you
minutes
so much.
to
Thank you so much, Comrade.
end time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angela. Thank you. That's very strong and very elaborate. I don't know. I'll give you one sentence only, because William, you had before, you had 2 chances, because we are going out to 8. But I think like you have 2 minutes past time, isn't it? You're 5 minutes. Yeah. So let's have about so Olo just come on and talk about fragmentation a little bit. Sheila has given us about 5 minutes to wind up. But let's talk about.
I'll make this quick. My battery is also running down. But what I mean, fragmentation also arises out of the fact that we don't have the uniform information. I think Regina and Wanjira have talked about, what did they learn in Form 2 or at certain points? What turned Wanjira on, Maina wa Kenyati and so on? I mean, during our school days, we read about certain things and involved in conversations that the youth now and other people, even people who are, many people do not know. And that is why I think the library, Njuki the library, the Mashujaa library, we need to strengthen the Mashujaa library and say, how do we scale this up in terms of what Regina was called connecting? Because you see, what are we struggling about? We do not, the people who are struggling, Rachel and others, Some of them do not know the history of this country. So if we are going to struggle and then we do not know the history of this country and then we don't have the kind of thing that make us feel outraged, because you can only struggle if you feel outraged about something. Now, if the outrage is about lack of accessing tender, at a government facility, or, I mean, we have technology now. I think Regina talked about technology. Are we utilizing, what are the conversations within the technological spaces? It is about mundane things. It is not about the kind of talk that we used to have when we were either at high school or universities. I mean, what are youths rioting for at the universities and colleges? They are rioting about mundane things, not national issues. So I think we need to utilize the space, technology. We need to drive. I want Rachel, use the space. I want the Justice Center. I want the Justice Center to have the kind of outreach in terms of information that is powerful, that the media would like to pick. What are we, have you created some technology ought to give you a space to create media? The social justice centers, have they created some kind of media? What are they uploading on those platforms that should help the other youths to understand where the country is? So I think in terms of fragmentation, while we are talking about ethnicity, politics, and all the others, to a large extent, I think the uniformity of thought, the uniformity of information, in terms of what we are struggling about from the past and now, is something that we need to deal with. Because unless all of us understand what the problems of this country are and feel that there is need to correct them, then, for example, who goes to line up during political party nominations? And what reason motivates them is not change. Some of them are simply handouts. So can we get the youth and other people to participate? And we cannot leave it to the politicians to do. We need to get people out there, but with information. How do we get the information out there to ensure that everybody feels uniformly across the country? If it is the youth, then there's mobilization. I remember before Bomas, around Bomas 1, as youths, we would go across every province mobilizing all the youths. Now, we don't have that any longer. So fragmentation may continue, but I think we have an opportunity because we are, like Regina indicated, some of the organizations that are big enough have capacity for us to utilize their spaces, also utilize their frameworks to ensure that we reach out to the rest of the country, to ensure that we bridge the gap in terms of this fragmentation so that we then focus on the bigger issues for this country. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you so much. I will. Thank you so much. I will. Before I return the ball back to our host Sheila, I will. I think we have. I appreciate very much the time that you have had, all of you, Rachel, Regina, and Wanjiro, and Jabu, and Lord Janak, and of course Sheila, because of the chance to make us discuss this. I think this is a debate which can be continued. It's always very, very engaging. It cannot be exhausted. Because now you're realizing that we have various steps and lessons learned that we have come to think of. For example, we have seen that one of the way forward in terms of is to keep on having a singular agenda that will unite us, like the way we were united in 1992, 2002, and maybe 2010. A singular agenda is still being looked upon by civil society, but also we have heard from Janak that we must be able to leverage the technology, that every assistance, every struggle must have means of technology. We have social media now, we have podcasts, we have many other sorts of media. We must be able to leverage to that, and in terms of even being us together. But also we have said in terms of a way forward that there must be continuous information that is always given to people, right information wherever they are struggling, and that is also an arena of struggle that is very key. But also we have said that, and I think that this has been done by Regina, but also by Wanjiro and others, is that we must keep on connecting the struggles that are being waged on in various spaces. We always say that there is no struggle which is weak, which is smaller or bigger than the other. And all struggles are struggle against the system and for development, and they must be connected. And we must appreciate the various struggles that are happening in this country. And this is a way of bringing us all together. Don't try to undermine the struggle which is happening. Even if it's a small library, even if it is about giving food to the deprived. I think this is still a struggle. But also another way forward, I think, from Jabu and others, is that the centrality of youth in struggle, that the youth should be able to take over the mantle, not to be invited into the table or to the buffet, but to be able to take on the struggle much more, like the way it has been having before. But much more, what we are talking about is that we must be able to make the civil society, and this has been done by all the colleagues here, the civil society will continue striving to have one voice and one agenda and one umbrella. And it is only when you are stronger that you'll be listened to. And I think with those summary of what we've talked about, I'll give back the ball to Sheila. So karibu Sheila.
Okay. Thank you so much, Njuki. And also thank you very, very much, the rest of the panelists, for doing some justice to this particular topic. I could really get the sense that you're all really, really grassroots, you know, civil society activists, because of the way you're passionate about, you know, what the causes the different causes that you're all working on. And that is really, really good. I'd like to say thank you very much on behalf of Conrad. Thank you for the grateful insights that you've shared as far as this particular topic is concerned. And as I'd earlier mentioned, it is often said that it is, you know, easier to struggle for democracy, but the most difficult bit is actually to sustain it, you know, and that's why we continue to collaborate, we continue to work together. As Mukali also mentioned earlier on, that we need to, we need to like change our strategies, you know, become more innovative and creative on how best, you know, we can continue to, you know, to educate the masses, to educate the public, not just to educate the youth, you know, because there's a lot of emphasis that has been put on youth. But for me, I would say it is to actually to educate the Kenyan public, you know, on how they can get out, how they can speak out, how they can take part in public participation, you know, and also really be more engaged in our political processes so that we can all achieve, you know, this desired change that we want, this democracy that we want, you know. And I believe if we work together, you know, if we tap into the different, you know, create synergies and tap into the different, you know, activism and causes, you know, that are represented here and much more out there, I want to believe we can really achieve that desired change which we want, and pretty much, you know, that democracy that we all envision. I think I really don't have much to say. Njuki really summarized it all as far as the way forward and the key pointers that came out, key highlights that came out from each and every panelist. So I don't want to repeat myself. I just want to say thank you, and let's continue to, you know, I don't think fighting for democracy is the right word to use, but for lack of a better word, let's just continue to, you know, to engage, you know. Janak has given us a very good challenge us so well about technology, you know. But right now things are really shifting, you know, online, but you also have to support it with offline means. So we really have to tap into all the different means and ways we can use to, you know, to educate our public and also fight for this democracy and this right democracy that we want to achieve. So thank you on behalf of Conrad. Thank you again. Wish you all a good night and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And thank you, Njuki.
Yes, thank you very much. All the best. Lovely evening.
Bye bye. Thank you.